Part of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to have this time with you again to share in the news cycle together with some common sense, right? A little bit of positivity doesn't hurt, does it? You know, we have so much blame game, so many people divided over who is the most victim. How about we stop victimizing people, right? How about we stop this machine of scapegoating that is our government today? It continues to scapegoat. And all it does is get us distracted by blaming each other or blaming politicians because we are so obsessed with being drawn into the orbit of personalities. I don't like Nancy Pelosi's the way she gets her hair cut. I don't like Trump, the way he acts. I don't like this person. I don't like Mitch McConnell, what he says and how he does his stuff. So all that is all driven by being obsessed with your personality. These personalities that have quirks and flaws and, vanilla type scandals over and over and over again, same old stuff. And when you focus on that, what are you doing? Look, you're wasting your time. Ultimately, you're wasting your time. Now, if you want to have entertainment, that's fine. But if you think your entertainment choice, which is politics, is solving problems, then you're becoming part of the problem. You're buying into this theater of performance art. What we need is for folks to let go of their worship of the state and to remember that so much of the things that they are bothered by are things that they can solve in their own lives. We are always told by the conservatives, oh, look what the universities have done again. Look what they've said. Look how they've treated people. Or they say, well, look at what this thing is being taught to our children in public government schools and elementary even, right? And that's okay. Okay, say that. Now, did you leave the school? No, you didn't leave government school? Oh, no. And did you withdraw your funding from the boosting of these universities? No, you didn't. Did you get your kid out of these universities? No, you didn't do that. Oh, man. Looks like you're not serious. Looks like you'd rather just complain about things rather than being a leader. So our society is in desperate need for leaders, is it not? Would you agree with me that our society needs leaders, people who can chart a new path for others to imitate? That's what this program is designed to do in one sense. We are kind of like a leadership academy. We're trying to build up leaders among us, right? Leaders who can go out and do things that people are afraid to do, apparently, like stop sending your kids to government school. Stop sending your young adults to universities that are not going to teach them anything good. Stop getting in debt to pursue those interests. See, in order to stop a problem, you cannot worry about voting for somebody. You have to start getting closer to home. Stay out of debt. If you have too much consumer debt, declare bankruptcy and don't touch credit again. Stay out of it. It is a predatory system, fractional reserve banking, money printed out of thin air. It's not real markets. So why would you play in a world like that, especially if you're accumulating a massive amount of consumer personal debt? Just stay out of the system, live within your means, and stay out of a dehumanizing system that we call public schools. Because that's the kind of recruiting ground for raising up a culture that puts up with the nihilism we see all around us. It's not normal to have Netflix pushing the kind of garbage content that they're pushing. They've been doing it for a long time. But people try to act shocked. Oh my goodness, did you see what they did? Oh, wow. It's like they've been doing this stuff for decades. Hollywood and entertainment culture pushing nihilism, pushing cynicism, pushing gross, pathetic, desperate attempts at trying to indoctrinate people into their cult What is the religion that they want people to be a part of? It's called political correctness. It's the idea of normalizing envy as the highest good. It's the idea of normalizing self-worship as the highest good. In a sense, envy and self-worship are the same thing in some sense, right? You have to see yourself as sacred if you believe that you are desirous and you are deserving of anything anybody else has around you that you believe you should have. You don't believe there's any limit to your desire except for whatever makes you feel good. That's nihilism. That's self-worship. And that's envy. Political correctness has tried to normalize as the standard of conduct envy. It's tried to create a situation in which we are all pitted against each other, fighting over who is the most victim. Are the gun owners the most victimized? They're the ones that always get scandalized as violent, evil people because they own a gun that is close in the shape as a gun that was used by a violent criminal. Is the LGBTQ the biggest victim group? How about the undocumented worker community? How about Christians? Christians say they're the biggest victim, right? That they get discriminated against in colleges, they get discriminated against in culture, they get mocked, their sacred symbols are mocked and humiliated. So is that the biggest victim group? The pro-life community might say that the unborn community, those who are unborn, who are killed in the womb, that they are the biggest discriminated group, that they're the biggest victim group. Women would say, no, it's women. Women, we have been, subjugated by men and everything. Capitalism, if you own a piece of land, you're part of subjugating women. If you're a Christian, you're subjugating women. If you believe that genders are different, you're subjugating women. That's what certain feminists say, right? Then you have Black Lives Matter saying, no, the biggest marginalized group is people of color. And now we're going to get vengeance because we want to dismantle the nuclear family. And you're like, what? What the heck? That's going to help the situation? Well, in their nihilistic, contorted, demented view, the problem that's facing the black community is the nuclear family has not been dismantled enough. If it can be completely dismantled, then they'll reach nirvana. That's the stupid, twisted ideology coming out of the six-figure professors in academia. And I saw a comedian, Dave Smith, made a point recently this week where he said that you have all these, and it's a very, very in keeping with what we talk about on this show. You have all these different academic folks coming out with all these different theories. And the ones that you see rise to the top that become normalized by, Starbucks and all the big giant corporations, NBC, and everybody gets on board with, the ones that rise to the top so fast are the ideas that are most effective for perpetuating the establishment power system in its hierarchy. So you can always tell your left-wing friend that if you're joining a movement which is completely televised, which is completely backed by all of its slogans are completely backed by all the big corporations, then rest assured the ideas at the heart of that movement have no possible threat to the establishment crooks and their swindling of the public. It's a very, very good thing to remember. If all giant corporations are backing your slogans, if they're all doing rituals on your team, you are not a part of any edgy dissenting group. But somehow, because we sent our kids to government school, they can't have the discernment to see that. So who's to blame, really? Is it the people who have been raised by a garbage, nihilistic government school system from a childhood all the way into the college years? Are they really to blame, or are they a victim too? Who is really at fault here when you're sending kids off that are taught to not how to have critical thinking, and then you have a situation where people have no ability to be able to recognize the fact that their ideology is totally a useful tool, a useful pawn for establishment crooked swindlers of the people's justice. If your ideology is backed by all the giant corporations and all the major TV and media outlets and major blogs, then you are not a part of change. You are part of entrenching the people's injustice as the standard conduct of society. We'll continue to unpack this live on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski. You can call in at 727-587-1040. 727-587-1040. Back in just a moment.
This portion of the upcoming amazing broadcast is brought to you by the law firm of Catania & Catania, award-winning personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less, delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Need a trusted hand sanitizer made in the USA? Physicians Group Hand Sanitizer reduces bacteria that can cause disease. Our liquid sanitizer is made of 75% ethanol alcohol. Our gel sanitizer is 70%. Neither requires soap or water. Simply cover all surfaces of your hands, then rub them together until dry. Our hand sanitizer comes in 2 to 16-ounce bottles and gallon jugs. Order now at easyhandsanitizer.com and receive 10% off all orders over $100. That's easyhandsanitizer.com.
I'm attorney Young Kim. The financial problems caused by the coronavirus nightmare are not going away anytime soon. If you are behind on your credit card or mortgage payments, or bill collectors are harassing you, there are ways to get them off your back and legally wipe the slate clean. Call Consumer Law Attorneys at 888-99-FRESH for a free consultation. Learn how we can stop the bank and collection companies and help people in debt get a fresh start. Call 888-99-FRESH, 37374. Main office, St. Petersburg.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account? There is another option, monetary metals. They pay interest on gold, in gold, with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
Jen, last week I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. You just need some new earrings and you'll feel a lot better.
When a friend tells you they've been diagnosed with a mental illness, it can be a little awkward. But what's even more awkward is, if you're not there for her, she'll be less likely to recover.
Jen, last week I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Girl, I'm here for you.
Mental illness. What a difference a friend makes. To learn more, go to whatadifference.org. This message is brought to you by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
New guidelines show it's relatively safe for women with epilepsy to become pregnant, but it's recommended they avoid the seizure drug valproate since the drug can cause birth defects. For more information on these guidelines from the American Academy of Neurology and American Epilepsy Society, visit thebrainmatters.org.
Looking for leaders around our community to rise up and innovate, to create, to make good film, to make good music, to make good homes. If you're a home builder, don't make cookie cutter stuff. Make something that you're proud of. To do good things like create nuclear fusion with low temperatures so you don't have the expenses and the tax dollars needed to finance the development of these things. We're looking for leaders on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're going to cultivate the change that we need because we understand the principle of personhood is rooted in objective reality. We believe that the human being is sacred And the problem is people say, I'm going to take a shortcut. I believe that in theory, but I'm going to take a shortcut because I need a minimum wage increase. I need this spending thing. I need this wall built. I need this thing, that thing, this thing, that thing. I'm going to play in the devil's playground of politics. And then I'll come back and, yeah, I'll agree with you superficially that personhood matters, but it doesn't matter for all of my sacred cows, which ultimately are our political allures, the things that draw us in, the things that make us fall prey to shortcuts to heaven that lead to hell. And a lot of people are talking about that Netflix show that came out showing young kids in dancing in disgusting sexualized way. And people are boycotting Netflix and they're saying it's time. And they're acting like this hasn't been happening for decades by all these major media companies. We've talked about this on the program before. ABC, was celebrating a kid, a 10-year-old kid dressed up in a drag outfit, parading around on video with a guy who was convicted of murdering young people with a date rape drug name of a drug listed above the kid's head in the video, and the kid's being celebrated as a champion for children to emulate on ABC's daytime programming. And you're just now, oh yeah, it's time. No, we need people to stop being children about this stuff, or else children are going to suffer. If you don't have adults that lead, if we're infantilized because we're too afraid to be, I want to keep up with the Joneses. I got to send my kid to this stupid school too. I want them to have a certificate because I went to that school and my grandpapa went to that school. That's stupid, loser, conservative mentality. Stop. Stop being a loser. That's what we have to convince folks to realize. Stop being a loser. Stop saying you're going to, oh, yeah, this is terrible. And then you've got a subscription to Netflix. You're subscribing to all the garbage programming. You're sending your kid to government school. You don't understand what Keynesian economics is. You don't understand what universities are teaching. You don't know what critical race theory is. You don't know any of this stuff. You're just being boxed around like a dumb loser. That's how so much of conservative America has been acting, because they don't have leadership. And they don't have leadership in their churches either, because churches are too stuck on getting attendance up. Isn't it funny that the more Jesus preached, his attendance went down? And yet we have people who say they speak for Jesus in the pulpit all around this world, and their whole mark of success is my attendance increasing. How can you imitate Jesus as a shepherd and preach the truth of the gospel? If you're going to imitate Jesus and teach the real truth of the gospel, you should not be measuring your success based on, is our attendance getting bigger? Is our building going to be able to expand? Are we going to be able to expand that new program? How do we make our logo look slick like a marketing agency? How do we make our logo look like a cafe for coffee? This is stupid, childish idiocy. You're taking your cues about the kingdom of heaven from dumb Madison Avenue garbage slop, and you think that you're somehow changing things because you go to church. If you go to church and you're hearing a logo and you're looking at a logo that looks like from Starbucks, and there's more concern with getting the crowd up, Jesus, the more he preached, the crowd went away until they had to kill him. How are you going to learn how Jesus is supposed to be imitated from people who get up every week and say, how can I get my attendance up? How can I change my way of speaking or change the logo of my church and the font so that I can get attendance up? Because I want to imitate a guy who literally, the longer he preached, the crowd went away and said, I can't stand this guy. This guy is saying some crazy stuff, to the point where they sold him out and started a lynch mob on him. You have churches that say, I want donations, tax deductible. I don't want to speak about politics. And then they say, what is a church? A church is a place that comes to worship Jesus. Well, what does it mean to worship Jesus? It means to imitate Jesus. It doesn't mean to sit in a boat like Peter and say, I don't want to get out and walk on water and be like Jesus. I just want to worship him from afar. That's how churches are acting. You be Jesus, over there, Jesus, and I'll sit over here and get my building fund increased. I'll get the programs. We got to buy 10 more Xboxes. We're not going to teach what do not resist evil with violence means. We're not going to teach that. We're not going to teach God desires mercy, not sacrifice. We're not going to teach the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. We're not going to teach any of that stuff. We're going to increase Xbox production. We're going to increase our, superficial programs because we need to enlarge our audience. That is the metric by which we determine our success. That is not a metric that's found in the imitation of Jesus. That doesn't mean that you can't ever have an audience. The point is, if that's your metric, which is 90% of the churches you see around you, no wonder that we have a culture that sends their kids to government schools, that sends their kids to universities, and they don't understand how they're getting worked over by nihilists, boxing them left, right. And they go to the church saying, okay, I'm ready to imitate the master of history, Jesus himself. And they get Xbox, and they get a slogan, and they get a logo, and they get a cutout card. You have to cut it out and put your name and address so that we can contact you with a gift basket, because they heard that was a cool move by Madison Avenue advertisers. Stupid stuff. Yeah, no wonder people think it's a joke to go to church. But I want to go on to this thing here. D.S. Ragsdale online says, if you wanted to make a film that critiqued animal abuse and cruelty, would you be allowed to actually abuse animals in it? You would not. Because unlike young girls, Hollywood actually has rules about harming animals while filming. And he's in reference to this movie that people are talking about on Netflix that's displaying and showing girls in the most disgusting, dehumanizing, degrading, misogynistic way. And then the stupid liberals that try to act smart, these people think they're smart and they vote for a warmongering corporate hack like Hillary Clinton. These people are a joke. They don't know anything about what art looks like. But they try to act all artistic. Oh, well, it's actually critiquing the exploitation of children. But the guy's point there is very well put. If you're going to say we're going to make a movie about animals being exploited in the circus, and therefore we have to whip the elephant live on the movie, for real, these stupid sycophants would come out and say, oh my goodness, this is unprecedented. But if you show kids doing dances and acting in ways to somehow critique the exploitation of kids, it's okay. These are stupid. These are not artistic. There's nothing sophisticated about this. This is just slop. This is garbage bread and circuses, lowbrow trash masquerading as some kind of enlightened art. It's not. There's nothing good about it. But what's the answer to that, right? McChurch? How can you fight McWoke if you got to McChurch? McChurch think they understand how to imitate Jesus, and all they care about getting numbers up. All they care about is how we ran out of latte syrup. Huh? Don't even know how to teach do not resist evil with violence. What does that mean? Jesus said, go and learn what this means. God desires mercy, not sacrifice. Have you heard that preached? What does that mean as it pertains to the minimum wage? What does that mean as it pertains to bailouts? What does that mean as it pertains to using violence of the state to give health care? What does that mean as it pertains to using a war machine to create perpetual war around the world on behalf of a few corporatists? Do you hear that on Sunday? Did you ever hear that on Wednesday night? That's when you're supposed to get the hardcore stuff. Sunday night? Sir? No, you don't hear that? Huh. No wonder McWoke is so strong. That's the corporate communists of our leftist nihilist culture. No wonder it's so strong. People go to the house of Jesus and they get nothing but garbage. And they sing songs about Jesus, but there's no actual imitation. There's no concern to imitate. We're going to change that.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about.
A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040 WHP.
California remaining under a state of emergency with Governor Gavin Newsom touring the North Complex fire. It's one of the 5 most destructive fires in the state. 19 people are dead across California, Oregon, and Washington due to fire this week.
Oregon's governor says dozens of people are still missing. Honoring the victims on this 9/11 commemorations, marking 19 years today since the attacks, and all 3,000 people died while planes crashed into the Pentagon, the rural field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and New York's Twin Towers. In New York City, many families still waiting for their loved ones to be identified.
The attack on the World Trade Center killed 2,753 people. 19 years later, more than 1,000 of those victims have still not been positively identified. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner here, though, is still trying. It has recovered nearly 22,000 pieces of human remains and is still testing them as DNA technology evolves.
ABC's Aaron Katersky.
See, what people get focused on is they get focused on, I have the right mental proposition, so therefore I'm a Christian, right? So you'll have people, if you go online, you'll see them debate with you all day long. Oh, you got to be a Methodist. Oh, you got to be a Protestant. You got to be Orthodox. No, you got to be Catholic. You got to be this kind of Catholic, this kind of thing, that kind of thing. Everybody's trying to say, I figured it out. You got to do this ritual, join this group, join this ritual, perform this action, do baptism this way, say your Hail Mary to this one. And if you do X, Y, and Z like I do, then you're good. You're in the right place. If you think the right thoughts as I do, I think the Russian Orthodox Church is the best church. I think the Roman Catholic Church is the best church. Therefore, I am Christian. I think you have to do this ritual. I think salvation is this way, not that way. I think it's this thing, that thing. The more you do the I think, therefore I am, you're not Christian. You're Descartes. You're Cartesian. Uh-oh. See, it slips up even when you think, oh, I'm not I'm an authentic Christian. No, what you are is a Cartesian. Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am. I think blank, therefore I am Christian. I think salvation is works and faith and all this stuff. I think you have to have Holy Spirit tongue. I think you have to be part of this church. I think, therefore I am the real team. That's what humans do. That's the mistake that we make. Cartesian trap. Christianity is much more Shakespearean. In another way of saying it, Shakespeare is much closer to Christianity than rationalists like Cartesians. Shakespeare is closer to the biblical approach, which is to be or not to be. The word be implies imitation. And the one thing most of the Mick churches trying to act like they've got an alternative to the Mick woke corporate nihilistic culture, but they imitate them every step of the way. The one thing that most churches don't like when it gets down to it is you imitating Jesus. Well, that'll get you in trouble. Jesus challenged every sacred cow of his society. And people say, hey, we'll create a church. It'll be a team that uses the word Jesus, but we're not going to challenge hardly any sacred cows at all. The only sacred cows we're going to challenge are the so-called sacred cows that all the giant corporations and pop culture figures tell us it's okay to critique. Oh, goodness gracious. And then we wonder why our society is falling apart. Jesus' personhood revolution, in which he introduces the dignity of every human person into history, is the most important thing that happened in history. And yet, if people want to learn about it, and they go, okay, where can I learn about Jesus' life? Oh, there's a thing called church. If you go there, you'll learn about what Jesus did, what he thought like, what he would do in the situations you're in, how he would deal with bullies, how would he deal with coercive machines like statism, how does he deal with health, how does he deal with fear. So you show up to those places and they're either worshiping the flag and becoming hooray, hooray, let's go off to war, or they're pushing some McWoke garbage corporate sloganeering that they got from Madison Avenue or TikTok or something. And people are going there looking for the master of history and they get a bunch of jokes. The reason why we're having the debates that we're having about who is the biggest victim, which group is the biggest victimized group, is because we're playing in the fishbowl that Jesus inaugurated into history. People think that Jesus created a new religion. He didn't. He created a new reality. He created a new way of humans getting along with one another. And that story of his life, of the idea that God would stand on the side of the person being scapegoated, the person being excommunicated from society and lynched, that Jesus would be the place of God's presence in that moment. That story was so radical at its time and to this day that it has been shaping our storytelling and our media ever since. And so everything you look at when you see people worrying about which group is the most victimized, they're trying to say, I am imitating Jesus and I don't know why. Because if you ask them, are you Christian? Most, oh no, I'm not Christian, or I don't care. That doesn't have to do with this. But in reality, it's all a question of they're all trying to compete with being like Jesus. They all want to be the martyr's perch. They all want to be the one who is seen as crucified. They want the postcard of being on the cross without the reality, okay? They want the postcard of being a victim, but not the reality of it. Because the true reality of standing for victims means you stand for the individual person and you do it every single time. You see? If you stand for the individual person, that means you're not going to support a minimum wage law, because a minimum wage law is backed by the initiation of violence. Why would you put someone in a cage or threaten to put them in a cage because they didn't pay $16 an hour versus $15? You think people should be paid a minimum wage? Well, guess what? You're not God. You don't get to put a gun to people's heads in society and say, you will do what I tell you to. You don't get to do that, because God doesn't even do that. So you want to be the God that you think God should be. God does not use coercion to get you to have a humble heart and pay a fair wage to your workers. But then people say, oh, I'm a sophisticated ideologue. I don't like capitalism. And you hear that on the conservatives and the liberals. I know how to create a better society. We're going to have minimum wage. Okay, what will it be? How about $70 an hour? Can we have a $70 minimum wage? Oh, no. Well, how do you know? We printed trillions of dollars out of thin air. I think the minimum wage should be $89 starting out. $89 an hour. Because of all the trillions of dollars we printed out of thin air, we're going to need $89 of minimum wage to be able to have people having a starting job. You see how these fools, they want to destroy God's moral character by saying, oh, I hate capitalism. Therefore, we'll have minimum wage. Therefore, we'll put people in cages if they don't pay the wage. And you're like, well, who in the blue hell made you God? Because God doesn't even act that way. God doesn't use violence. God doesn't initiate sacrifice. He says sacrifice is finished. He said God desires mercy, not sacrifice. It doesn't say mercy via sacrifice. That's what the fools on left and right do. They say, well, it's merciful to pay a minimum wage. We got to pay, it's merciful to give a wage to an entry-level worker, right? And so I think it's merciful that it be $15. And they say, well, I'm going to use the force of violence. I'm going to put a gun to people's heads and say, you pay $15 or you go to jail. Or we'll steal your money. Why? Who are you? You think you're God? See, it's not libertarianism or capitalism. That's a stupid waste of time. Focus on the real reality of the story of Jesus. If you want to know why your world is having this obsession with who is the victim, it's based on this concept that I'm talking about. The idea that you have to protect the human person, no matter who they are, including the person who's paying a wage. Jesus says God desires mercy, not sacrifice. And every person who votes for the perpetuation of a minimum wage, and look, you're like, why are you picking on this random law? Because I'm trying to show you how baked into our system the wickedness is. Do you see? I can take a banal law, like who the heck is fighting about minimum wage? Well, a lot of people are actually, and that's part of the resentment that's built into our envy ideologies. So it is a big deal, but I'm taking a random, arbitrary branch off of this behemoth of state worshiping culture, and I'm showing you, I'm just deconstructing it live right now with you, how violence is baked into it and how hatred for God's character is built into a law like that. I'm not saying that if you're ignorant of these things and you're going along, that you hate God's character. That would be a stupid, fake take to take away from what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the reality. A lot of ignorant people get into stuff, they don't know what they're doing. But the reality of these laws are that we are God, humans are God, God is dead. God said, desire mercy, not sacrifice. We're smarter than God. We're going to do mercy via sacrifice, which means if you don't pay the merciful wage of $15 an hour, like Uncle Bernie Sanders says, we're going to sacrifice you with a threat. And so most people obey before the sacrifice comes to fruition. So therefore they say, that's not a violent law. That's stupid. If you have a bully, they threaten, I'm going to beat you up if you don't give me your lunch money. And so every day you go to the school and you just give them the lunch money. There's no violence actually being seen, but the threat thereof is the violence creating the reality that we have. And so for fools that hate the reality of a loving God and they want to create their own reality made in their image, they want to use coercion and say, we will decree a minimum wage. It will be $15, not a dime less. And I'm saying they're cheapskates because it should be $89 if you're going to have a minimum wage. See, because we have so much inflation to pay for all this garbage. See how it becomes moralistic nihilism, right? Because if you don't understand the implications of how our ethics and our morality will be in light of the unleashing of the personhood revolution of Jesus, then you're just going to be caught unawares as to what in the world this maelstrom of a culture is. And I'm providing you an ability to have a lighthouse by looking to the role model of Jesus to understand what's happening. This is not an arbitrary role model. This is the essential role model that explains to you why the left acts the way they do, why the movies that you watch in Hollywood look the way they do, why the music sounds the way it sounds. I'm trying to show you that this gives you an insight into the whole framework because our society has been haunted by the cross for 2,000 years. It's baked into our imagination. It's baked into our cultural appetites. It's baked into our scandals, and it's baked into our ideology. Nobody in media is telling you this. This is why it's so different when I'm talking to you about this. This is back to the future. You know, we're going in a whole new place. But it's the most important place for us to go because if you don't understand the implications of Jesus in our history and our culture, then you're not gonna see why things are falling apart. Because the longer we continue to try to keep the old way of going, of sacrificing, of saying, hey, David, I like your little personhood thing, but we need to spend $1 trillion for this program and $1 trillion for that program and $1 billion for a handout for the soy farmers in Iowa because Trump's got to win Iowa and all this stupid Machiavellian nihilism. The more you do that, the more you're surrendering your opportunity for a vibrant future for your family, your kids, everybody. Because you can't go back. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. You can't go back to the old way of doing things, of scapegoating and sacrificing one for the greater good. Jesus broke that mechanism, and people who even study Rene Girard, who helps you see this, people who study him don't even get what I'm saying because it's hard to see it. It's hard to see the water of the fishbowl that you're swimming in. everybody's like, yeah, I can see scapegoating. Yeah, like they're scapegoating, they're scapegoating Trump about him wanting to have friends with Russia, but they can't see how it's built into actually every fabric of our statist worship, of our worship of big government for everything that we have. But once you see it, you'll begin to see how all of this stuff is very predictable. That we have this need for transcendent sacredness. Why is it that they create a shrine where they create this holy space where people are being baptized, where George Floyd was murdered? Because people are hungering for the sacred. They're hungering for the transcendence, right? And because Jesus puts into our mind the idea that God stands with the vulnerable, God stands with the person being persecuted by the empire. Someone gets killed with people on his back for $20, and we rightfully recoil from that. But because we're disobedient and wanting to we don't want to imitate Jesus, therefore we have to try to supplant it and say, well, we'll create a shrine and we'll create like a kind of new religion that will be all about wokeism and violence and vengeance and tear down capitalism. And it's just so much chaos that doesn't need to be there because we're arrogant as a society. We don't want to recognize who the real master of history is. We think we can do it better than Jesus. I'm telling you, we don't want to imitate Jesus. We want to covet his cross. But we don't want to live in the reality of being on the cross. We want a postcard crucifixion. You know, you go those theme parks which you put your head in, and then it shows you, you know, there's a painting of a character, and you put your head in the hole, and then you get the photo. That's how we want to do the cross. We go up on the ladder behind this picture of a crucified man. We put our head in the hole. Someone takes our photo. We say, look, I'm oppressed. Minimum wage, increase it now. Look, I'm oppressed. Give me climate change policy now. Look, I'm oppressed. Take away your guns right now. Look, I'm oppressed. Rig the market for me. I'm oppressed. We don't want to live in the reality of standing on the side of victims, no matter who they are, because guess what? It's not a pretty place to be. Then you don't have a big giant clique to hang out with. You don't have major television networks to hang out with that got your back, making you feel like everything you believe is conveniently true. When you get into the real world of actually standing in solidarity with every scapegoat, every person, every individual person against the violence of collectivism, when you actually start doing it, it is not a comfortable place to be. There is not a ready-made, highly financed ideological complex willing to make you feel good. You're going to feel very vulnerable. You're going to feel very socially isolated because that's the way Jesus felt. We'll be back in just a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman. Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting your doctor. Discontinuing without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Attention Zantac users. The FDA requested that manufacturers pull Zantac and products containing ranitidine off the market, noting exposure to unacceptable levels of a cancer-causing agent. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with cancer after regular use of Zantac or ranitidine products, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Call Action Legal Group now for a free consultation. Call 866-321-1729. That's 866-321-1729.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account? There is another option, monetary metals. They pay interest on gold in gold, with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. David Gronowski here. Our website, aneighborschoice.com. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com. And we can see all around us that our society is becoming very unserious. It's becoming very fragile. Every slightest thing is like a tinderbox environment, right? Setting a fire to people. They're incensed, and they don't know why. And in some cases, they have right to be incensed. We have had a society for so long that has been managed by giant corporations and big banks. And every time the people say they've had enough, what do? They distract us with some shiny new politician to be mad about or in love with, or they throw out some new reason, some new crisis that allows people's liberties to be taken even further, or they create some kind of thing like social justice ideology is the newest version that distracts and pits us against each other. So it's a real bleak picture when you look at it that way. But it's in the bigger picture of history, it's a very positive picture. We've come a long way in some sense. We do scapegoat, we do ritually sacrifice people all the time, but because it's harder and harder for us to justify it, it becomes harder and harder for it to be done in such a brutal and barbaric way as it was done in the old times. I'm talking thousands of years ago and even 150 years ago and so forth. And that's a good thing, that we are losing our appetite for our violence. So I see in the long term that humanity is moving in fits and starts with massive swing downwards, kind of like cycles that are still like curlicues going upwards in a direction. So I think history is moving in a place. I believe that Jesus is saving the world. But what is he saving us from? He's saving us from our false gods that we make in our own image, including the false god that we call the name Jesus. We create these false, objectified versions of Jesus that become these license tools for us to bludgeon those that we don't like, that we're jealous of, that we wish we could be like. And we end up using these objectified versions of Jesus as justifications for all kinds of lazy, sloppy thinking and lazy, sloppy living, treating people in such ridiculous ways. But the good thing is, in the big picture, Jesus is such a master strategist that even in our awful mistakes, he continually creates masterpieces out of human species error. Every error we make, he finds a way to reverse into this kind of masterpiece moment of learning. And slowly but surely, it's like having the greatest coach of all time and the worst team. And the master strategist, is able to pull off the most miraculous wins with the dumbest, sloppiest players with the worst skill sets and the worst hearing ability you could ever imagine. We're the sloppy team. We're the ones who say, yeah, we imitate Jesus, and then we say, lock them up forever. Should have known the law. What law? You're the one that writes the law. Don't you know what we the people means? It means you create the law. So if you're creating wicked laws that lock people up for nonviolent crimes left and right, then don't complain when that same sacrificial machine comes chopping down on you, taking out your business. You cannot live by the sword or you'll die by the sword. Didn't you hear that from someone? Did they teach you that on Sunday service? Maybe that means something for people. Maybe we should learn what that means. You might say that I sound a little tough in my grading of the church, but we're in tough times. Have you not looked around at the cities burning all around us? Isn't it time for a little bit of tough love? If we're going to make some real correction, don't you need someone that says it like it is instead of this stupid slop you hear from the garbage media around you, conservative or liberal? Surface level analysis. We need the real stuff. We need the meat of the matter, not the cotton candy. So we have a lot of opportunity for learning in this time. The institutions that we have been propping up, like paper tigers, we've been inflating the bubbles of our economy for so long, and we're starting to see everything start to fracture. And it doesn't have to be chaotic, because it's very simple. If we actually start imitating Jesus, and that's why I'm talking about this in the public square, because we have to get folks out of the woodwork who are not going to church. In fact, the folks who sometimes are not in church sometimes are the best and ready with a deep hunger to imitate the true personhood revolution of Jesus. And understand that way of protecting individuals against collectivism is the way that our society can heal from its poisonous addiction to politics to find meaning. That the only way to stop the vicious tit-for-tat scapegoating machine is to stand in solidarity with all scapegoats. When they're scapegoating Trump because he wants to have peace with Russia, stand in the way of that mob and say, that's not appropriate. We need peace with the nuclear power. We need peace with every country. We don't need to spend $1 trillion for rich fat cats to make money off of killing people. Sick. Pathetic. It's a joke. It's a moral, reprehensible joke. And the same goes for every other thing. If you're tired of your society looking around and you're seeing it start to go up in flames, then you got to find out where the baptism is. Because your job is to baptize all nations. What does that mean? Baptism means to get your society, your neighborhood, your family, your church, yourself to look like the nonviolence of Jesus in its relationship to others, to look like mercy, not sacrifice, to look like mercy, not sacrifice when you go into the ballot box, to look like mercy, not sacrifice when you go into the jury duty, and to look like mercy, not sacrifice when you go on social media or you treat your employees or your employers. That is what it means. It's a full, holistic lifestyle renaissance that we have the opportunity to be a part of. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com to stay in touch. Godspeed.